Task number 1 here is asking you to compare the difference between using one-dimensional arrays versus two-dimensional arrays to see what's really the advantage of using two-dimensional arrays. You certainly can do that by using one-dimensional array, but it will turn out that it's not very convenient. Let's see how. You really have to see it. So now, first of all, let's create a new project for today. Java projects, CSE114, Spring 16, Week05, Lab2. Okay, so now, just on my computer, I'm going to create a session 4 today. You don't have to do it, session 1. Okay, so now let's create a new class. New class. Let's call that distance table. And then the main method. Okay, let's see how we can construct the table like in table 1 over there. Okay, I'll do a few entries with you, and then you can complete it from your side, and I'll complete on the screen as well, so that's just easier. Okay, let's see. So let's say we got version 1. Version 1, encode the table in, let's say, how many cities do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In 7 one-dimensional arrays. That's version 1. Version 2, encode the, let's say, distance table. That would be a little bit more complete. Distance table. The distance table in 1, 2-dimensional array. Okay, so you can already see the difference, right? So in strategy number 1, we need 7 variables. In strategy number 2, we need just 1 variable. So now let's try to do it. So for version 1, so now you can say, what about for version 1? We're gonna have an integer array, and then because each distance is simply just integer, you can say from Chicago, like that. Okay, is equal to. So now we're gonna use this notation here. So you can see 0, and then 983, and then 787, and then 714, and then 1375, 967. Okay, so that's how you create row number 1. Okay, since you got the handouts, why don't we actually do it now? Okay, so you can also do it on your computer, so you don't have to follow me. I'm gonna do it exactly the same. You're gonna create 7 variables from Chicago, from Boston, from New York, etc. Okay. Boston from Yeah, sorry, quite much tedious typing to do, but it's going to help you on version 2 and also exercise number 2 and 3. Maybe some light would help. Okay, when you're done, you can also try to align your variables and array elements such that it looks like a table. It's actually possible. I'll just show you on my screen. Okay, maybe another, well, you better double check because you might have some typos sometimes. Like for me, I also got typos. Okay, everyone done? Okay, good. Okay, so this is going to help us a lot when we get to version 2. Okay, that's how we construct the table here. And now, one question for you. Just a very simple question. How do you, for example, print out the table like this, like in the instruction? Let me just go there first. And just get the instruction to show you. So from the instruction there, you got the table like that. So let's say, how do you actually generate an output to the console, something like that? How many loops do you need? 7 loops, right? Because you're gonna walk over each of the arrays. Okay, that's something to keep in mind. So now let's just get back to the question. I'm pretty sure you can do that. Let me just put a comment there. You can do it by yourself. So I mean, I put a comment for you. For version 1 to output the distance table to the console, you will need 7 parallel loops, each of which prints a separate row. Okay, we don't need to do it now. It's quite easy to do, so I'll leave that to you. So now, question for you. It's over there. How do you figure out the distance, let's say, so now calculate the distance of, let's say we have an itinerary there. Let's say it's Chicago, Boston, and Miami. How do we calculate total distance from there? How do you look up the table? That's my question. So for example, well, apparently this itinerary here has 3 stops, which means somehow you have to figure out what's the distance between Chicago and Boston, and then figure out what's the distance between Boston and Miami, and then add it up together, right? That's what you would do. So now, how do you figure out the distance between Chicago and Boston? Which array should you use? We got 7 arrays over there, so which one should you use? From Chicago or from Boston, but let's say we just say from Chicago. Let's say this is the origin, this is destination. Okay, so now to do that, let's say integer distance from, well, from Chicago to Boston. Okay, a bit long, but that's okay. So now you have to go from Chicago, and then you have to somehow figure out how to get to Miami, right? So Miami should be of index. Let me show you the ugly way, and then I'll show you how to make it slightly better. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 at index 4. Okay, I'll show you the improvement in a moment. And then integer. So now, if you want to figure out the distance between Boston and Miami, of course we can use the from Boston array. So let's say distance from Boston to Miami. So from Boston. So Miami should be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, I did something wrong there. Sorry. From Chicago to Boston, this should be 2, not 4. Okay, that's my mistake. Okay, so 2 and 4. In some way, 2 and 4 are magic numbers. You don't really know what 2 and 4 mean. So as I hinted there, you better actually just define the indices for cities to be a constant. So you can refer to them. That's much more meaningful. As you can see over there, the way we arrange the table, Chicago should be at index 0, Boston should be at index 1, New York should be index 3, etc. Right? So that's what I suggested. So now let's say we just define in the very beginning so we can share between the 2 versions. You say final integer and then Chicago, okay, just like that, is equal to 0, and we need 7 constants. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, I'll change the name in a moment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Chicago, and then Boston, and then New York, and then Atlanta, and then Miami, and then Dallas, and Houston. Okay, so now this can greatly improve the readability of your code already. From Chicago to Boston. Okay, so you don't have to use 2. So Boston here really referring to 2. Sorry, referring to 1. So even 2 was actually wrong. This should be 1 rather than 2. Yeah. And then for Miami here, Miami. The good thing about this is, let's say somehow, if we decide to rearrange the table a little bit, let's just imagine that in the table you have in the handouts, let's say we want to swap the columns of Chicago with the column of Atlanta. In this case, we only have to change the corresponding numbers over here. That's the only place we have to change. And your code here doesn't have to change because they refer to the constants. Okay, just refer to the names. That's really the advantage. Okay, I hope you can see that. Okay, any questions up to now? That's the first version. And now to actually calculate the whole itinerary, you can say integer itinerary distance is equal to these 2. Distance from Boston to Miami plus the distance from actually I should do this first, sorry. Chicago to Boston plus Boston to Miami. Okay, and then you can also print it out. I wouldn't do it. You can try that. That's version 1. Okay. Any question about version 1? So now we can see that the number of variables you have to declare depends on how large the table is. Let's say now we have a much larger table where you got 100 cities over there. That means you need 100 variables over here. Okay, that's really the disadvantage of using one-dimensional array. So now let's see version 2, where we're going to use a two-dimensional array, which is much neater solution. Just one single variable always. So now we're gonna say, what about integer? So now we're using, so if you only have one pair of square brackets, that's one-dimensional array. And if you're using 2 square brackets, that means it's two-dimensional array. I'll explain this in a little bit more detail on Friday when I give the lecture. I'll draw more diagram on the board on Friday. So now that will be called distance. Let's say table here. Or you can simply say distance. That might be better. Let's say distance here is equal to new. And now let me just define another 2 constants. Okay. So now, as you can see, the table is like a square, right? So number of rows and number of columns, they are the same. So now you can say final integer number of cities is equal to 7. So which means there's 7 times 7, 49 entries over there. Okay. So now I'm going to use the constant over there. So here I can say number of cities, Okay, so also good. So for example, in your case, for the tic-tac-toe game, you can also define a constant. You can call that maybe the number of rows or number of columns. You can use the the constant when you actually initialize your two-dimensional array. So now, how do we? That's one way of doing it. So if you do this now, you have to assign each one of them individually. Okay, for example, you might say, let me just show you this first because I'm going to show you the other way will be better. Okay, let me show you the first way. You can say integer, let's say from Chicago to Chicago. That's really the the corner entry over there. You can see I'm already using the constant. Chicago to Chicago is assigned to 0. Sorry, distance, not integer. Okay, that's how the first entry can be assigned. So you can see now how elegant the solution is. So now we say distance table here. Now, when I'm going to go to the row of Chicago and go to the column of Chicago, I'm just using the constant name rather than magic number. The combination of meaningful constants and to refer to the indices of two-dimensional array is really recommended. Okay. Okay, that's one way to do it. Of course, you need 49 lines to assign this, but let's not do that. It's too tedious. Since we got our two-dimensional arrays already, why don't we just use it? Okay, let me put it into comments. I'll put this in the comment as well. So now we can simply use the angle bracket, the curly brackets notation. Do one thing for me. Just do an empty, just a pair of curly brackets first, and then hit enter here, like that. Okay. Can we just copy this part here? Okay, the 7 lines there. Edit, copy. Okay. Paste them here. Just make sure there's only one indentation here. Okay, like that. Paste them here. They wouldn't compile yet. Okay, I'm going to show you. So now the first row is going to be exactly what we did from Chicago. Put a comma here rather than semicolon. And the second row is going to be like that. And the third row is going to be from New York and put a comma there. Fourth row from Atlanta over there and put a comma there and keep going. Okay. that one, comma here, and that one. You don't need comma for the last one. Done. Okay, as you can see, that's why we also said in the slides, a two-dimensional array is really an array of arrays. You can see each element in this particular array here is an array. So first of all, you can see we start with this curly brackets here. So that means it is an array. You can see the first element here itself is an array. And the second element here is also an array. Okay? Any questions so far? Are we good? Or which part you're confused? You look very confused. Which part?
So it makes 7 rows and 7 columns.
7 rows actually, 7 rows. Yeah. So you can think of this. Let me draw some diagram for you. That might be easy. So think of this. So what we're doing is as follows. So we're creating an array called distance. And this is how I'm going to draw it, okay, vertically. And that one has 7 rows. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? Each one of the elements will be just another array. So this one here has also 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and etc. That's how it looks like. Okay, so the first row would be 0, 983, 787, etc. Okay, and the second row, third row. Yeah, that's how you think of it. Okay. So now, if I say distance, for example, I say distance 0, 4. If I say that, it's going to go to row number 0 and column number 4 and get whatever that's there. Okay, that's how it works. Very good. So now let's see how we can figure out the distance of that 3-stop itinerary. Okay, let me just copy this comment here and paste it there. So now, how do we figure out this itinerary here? So we know we need to first calculate Chicago to Boston and then Boston to Miami. So now, why don't I just have integer distance of itinerary? Okay, it's going to contain 2 parts. First of all, look up the distance from Chicago to Boston plus the distance from Boston to Miami. Right? And then we're done. So we are using the same variable here rather than, as before, we actually use 2 separate one-dimensional variables. So if you really compare the 2 versions, you can see the advantage of using 2-dimensional arrays in this case. Any questions? Nope, I hope that's clear. But you can actually run the code and see how each version, they should really produce the same answer. But the way to write a code is much easier if you use version 2, when, like a single 2-dimensional array. Especially when the number of cities is very large. Okay, that's really, really convenient. Okay, that's about part 1 actually. Task number 1. Again, let me stop the recording here and then say something about